Hello. I am not wearing my Snuggie tonight. I'm too self-conscious after I got some criticism, so I'm Snuggie-less. But let's jump right in. What happened in Chicago this week? To help balance the 2025 budget, the city is planning on installing 50 new speed trap cameras, so watch out for those. Bally's, the casino and hotel development on the river and River North, failed to close a $250 million fundraise. The fundraise was specifically carved out for minority investors. It's unclear if this has any larger implications on the broader project, which is much bigger. It's a multi-billion dollar project. 1871, the startup hub that famously made the Merchandise Mart the epicenter of technology and startups in Chicago, announced that it is shutting down. It's shutting down its physical presence in the Merchandise Mart, further evidence of the trouble that downtown businesses are having in getting people to come into offices since the pandemic. Similarly, Grubhub, once the crown jewel of the Chicago tech scene, announced that it's laying off 20% of its employee base, or about 500 Chicago employees. It was also reported that apartment starts in 2024, or the number of apartment units that were started being constructed in 2024, was the same level as in 2010, the heart of the Great Recession, which does not bode well for rent prices over the next couple of years when you have increasing demand, but not as increasing supply for a thing. Prices for that thing increase. So I don't think anyone listening to this is renting other than Monty and I will be impacted, but rent prices are likely to increase significantly over the next couple of years. That was a lot of bad news in a row, so I'm sorry. But in some good news, Illinois lawmakers have introduced a bill that would decriminalize prostitution in the state, though it doesn't seem like it's likely to pass. So you'll likely have to get your kicks by going to Nevada still. The big story this week in politics was that another poll came out from a different pollster about Mayor Johnson's approval rating, and this time the poll was somehow even worse than before. Definitely take this with a grain of salt because it was a Republican pollster and it's relatively easy to skew poll results, but the poll has him at 6.6% approval rating and 2% among Latinos, which makes him far and away the least popular politician in the entire country, major politician at least, including the New York Mayor Adams, who is literally likely going to jail. In fact, Rod Blagojevich, the former Illinois governor who did go to jail for corruption, had a higher approval rating than Johnson does now after it was clear he was going to jail. The poll result made national news, with one national publication, Newsweek, asking in its headline, "Is this the least popular politician in America?" The city council very narrowly voted to pass that $830 million bond that I talked about last week. It's meant to pay for infrastructure upgrades and repairs, like repairs to roads and sidewalks and bridges. I really can't overstate how controversial this was among city council aldermen, just given the highly unusual structure of the bond, the way the bond works. It makes it so that in 2050, there will still be $830 million left in debt to pay off, literally 25 years later. Byron Sigcho Lopez, an alderman, a very controversial alderman who I've talked about a bunch. 2 weeks ago, he got kicked out of the city council meeting for just losing his shit. Then 1 week ago, he blocked an ethics reform bill on behalf of the mayor. This week, he was in hot water for kicking a block club reporter out of a public community meeting because he didn't like her line of questioning. The extra context here is that the same alderman has engendered significant controversy in the past by speaking in front of a burnt American flag, literally on fire, and in front of Death to America style posters behind him, which he defended by highlighting his First Amendment speech rights. Yet this week, when he was interviewed about kicking the reporter out of the meeting and leaving other reporters in, he responded by basically mocking the reporter's First Amendment rights to ask tough questions. So that he's a chief ally of the mayor on the council, so he continues to spur up controversy and drama. I'm here for it. Rahm Emanuel and Lori Lightfoot are both reportedly helping Brandon Johnson prepare for his upcoming testimony in front of Congress. That's good. Hopefully he represents Chicago well in front of the country. 2 weeks after the mayor promised I talked about this before, a purge of people in his administration who don't adequately toe the party line. The head of the Parks District stepped down last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago. There were 3 or 4 other high-level positions that stepped down after the mayor announced that, and so now there's another one. The mayor gets to appoint whoever he wants to that position, and he intends to appoint one of his primary allies on the city council, another alderman, Ramirez Rosa, to that position. Ramirez Rosa is even more controversial than Byron Sigcho Lopez, so he may have been worried about getting reelected. Johnson will get to appoint his replacement on the council. It will likely be a guy named Anthony Quezada. Both Ramirez Rosa and Anthony Quezada identify as socialists. In 2027 mayoral news, what's going on with that? What did Susana Mendoza do this week? What she tweeted about this week? Well, this week she was livid about the $830 million bond, and then she was even more livid about the $830 million bond, and then she was just plain old angry about the $830 million bond. And finally, in some random news, 2 relatively high-level Mexican cartel members have been transferred into Chicago prisons. I don't know why we tend to be where they get extradited to, but I personally think it's kind of fun. And that is what happened in Chicago this week. I will see you next week.